Welcome to the CVU Show. My name is Isaac Jurgen, and this is
Quentin Barbeau. Today on the show, we will have 3 separate segments. Our first will be an interview with the school nurse to talk about COVID. Our second will be with the school principal, Adam, to talk about the futures for the school. And our third and final interview will be with the coach, Ron, about the upcoming football season.
our first segment today will be an interview with the nurse by Quentin Barbeau.
Hey, I'm Quentin Barbeau, here with the CVU Show, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Megan Trevithick. I'm one of the school nurses here at CVU.
So, a lot of people around CVU have had many questions about COVID and how it can affect them. So here are the questions. What's going to happen if someone tests positive for COVID and it spreads around the school?
That's a great question. And I know a lot of people around here are wondering. I think ideally, if we have a COVID case, we are going to be able to get that person quarantined and separated and make sure that we contact anybody who's been in close contact with them to take extra precautions so that ideally we are not spreading COVID around the school. Our goal is not to spread COVID around the school. If that were to happen, then we would have to probably go into remote learning for a little while. It is very possible that we might have like a day or two where we had to go to remote learning just to buy time to make sure that we are contacting everybody who was potentially in contact with somebody who tests positive and make sure that we have everybody quarantined that needs to be so the rest of us can safely return to school.
If that were to happen, how long do you think the school would shut down for?
I think that, from that first question, I honestly think that it's going to be a case-by-case scenario. If it is just one person that we find out has COVID, it's possible based off of our schedule right now at school that they potentially hadn't been to school for 5 days before, and the chances are much less that we would have to shut down anyway, even if there was a positive case, because there may not have been the exposure with everybody here at school to begin with. So it's really going to depend on each case scenario and how many people may have been in contact with that student or faculty member.
There's still a lot of people in the halls during passing times, like after classes are done. Is that safe?
It probably doesn't feel that safe because you're told to separate from everybody, but really we're all wearing masks, so we're protected. And when you're walking in the hall, you are asked to socially distance as much as possible. If you are within 6 feet from somebody else and you're just passing, that you are still safe. The chances of you getting anything are minimal to none. So we are okay, otherwise we would not be doing that at this time. There is a rule of thumb, and it's really spending up to 15 minutes with somebody who potentially has COVID, that you increase that possibility of becoming COVID positive yourself.
What would happen if someone contracts a fever during school?
We try to get everybody at the beginning of school, right? Make sure that people don't enter who have a fever, but it does happen where fevers show up later on in the day. And if that were the case, we would hope that that student came to us or faculty member. We have a special space to keep somebody safe, and we would put them in that space until they were able to get picked up, which ideally, we do have a request out there for all family members to be able to come as soon as they were called to get them out of the building. But we do have a space to keep them safe, and it's got a special air filtration system to make sure that that air is not coming in through the rest of the building. They would be wearing a mask. We're wearing masks. We're actually wearing more personal protective gear than normal, and we would get them out. And the fact that somebody has a fever doesn't necessarily mean that they have COVID. It could be that they just have strep or something else going on. I mean, there are a lot of different illnesses. That does bring up a really good point, that if we had to come to a classroom and we had to actually pick up like all of their books and stuff from the room, you might see us wearing goggles, a face shield, a gown, all of this protective gear. I don't want to start rumors all over school. It's very possible that somebody just has, a fever and a cold or something else going on, and it is not COVID, but I could see how that would potentially spread like wildfire. That is just what we have to do to go through the motions to make sure that we are safe at all times, not knowing.
Are there any ways that students at CVU can better protect themselves while in school?
I think that students are doing a great job right now. I think that we just need to continue really looking after ourselves by wearing our masks, by washing our hands, making sure that you're using the hand sanitizer before and after classes and before and after eating. Socially distancing, I think that is the biggest struggle for teenagers, just because it's so natural to be close, and to feel like you have to like talk from like a couch space away is a little bit awkward. So I think that we just need to be conscientious, continue to look after each other and ourselves, and make sure we continue to follow these rules and regulations and not necessarily get, too relaxed. Because I think that, as the temperatures change and stuff, there may be more illnesses and struggles that come. So as long as everybody's washing their hands and wearing their masks ideally and socially distancing, we should all be all set.
Like you said, with like how it might not always be COVID that a student might have, what would you do if a student had like a higher temperature when going into the building and it was just a common cold?
So that is a tough one for us because we are going into cold season as it is. I think at this point we have to treat everything a little bit more cautiously. So we are asking that whether it's faculty members or students, if you wake up and you have a cold, even if you don't have a temperature yet, that you take the day for yourself to be safe and to look after yourself. See how the day goes, see if the symptoms get worse. We are recommending that everybody reaches out and talks to their doctors because we want their guidance. They're the ones that really can diagnose to know whether you should continue to monitor and stay home and or potentially get a COVID test before coming back. One of the things that we do request is that you wait for about 24 hours that your symptoms are actually really improving and you do not have a temperature before returning to school without the use of any kind of medication, which may seem like a long time. It's where our scheduled system right now for school does help, because the chances of like being out for a week of school, you still at least have remote learning. So if you missed school, hopefully it would just be like 2 days of school in person that you had to make up. But we are asking everybody right now to be really cautious. Colds are hard because we all get them and you can get quite a few colds. So hopefully it won't impact our schooling too much. And if it does, maybe we have to come up with a different plan. But unfortunately, I think that the cold symptoms are too much, like they're too similar to COVID to rule out COVID being the case. So the main thing that we do worry about or look out for is a temperature. So we just want everyone to be careful and buy time, look after themselves. And if you actually stay home and rest, your cold will probably resolve itself faster.
Well, that's it for all the questions that we have today. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out and I can always come back or, answer anything else.
Thanks so much. Our second interview will be with Adam, the principal, interviewed by Isaac Jurgen.
Hi, my name is Isaac Jurgen, and we are here with the CVU Show, and this is...
Adam Bunting, your principal.
All right, so Adam, we have a couple questions for you today. Are we actually planning on moving away from half in school, half online? I know that's officially the plan, but is it realistically going to happen?
That's a good question. I mean, I would really, really hope at some point this year that we have the ability to have everybody back in the building and return to kind of school and life as normal as we used to know it. I do not see that happening in the next, say, 6 weeks, but it's really going to depend on what happens nationally and the guidance that we get from the state as well.
Okay. And how do you intend to keep social distance during winter months, especially in regards to circulated air and weather dangerous to be outside in?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen so far is that I've been really impressed with how awesome our students have been, and people have been pretty good at reminding each other about making sure the social distancing is there and that the masks are there. To be honest, it was like 3 days in the building before I even had to talk to one student about making sure they had a mask. So I'm actually not too worried about it. I still think, we're Vermonters. And it's cold outside, we go outside. As the former principal at CVU used to say, there's no bad weather, just bad clothing. So we'll keep getting out and we'll keep making sure people get some space, and you can't be cooped up all winter long.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an idea as to what the second semester will look like based on how things are going right now?
Well, one thing that we're sure that we're committed to is that we're going to stick with this 4x4 semester schedule for the rest of the year. We can't kind of break away from that, even if things change. So we would still have the same courses every day. My guess is that second semester will look a lot like this semester. You know, and for me, the big fear is I really don't want to go remote again. I'm going to do whatever it takes. Obviously, safety first, but I really do not want to go through the experience that we went through last spring.
All right, and last question. Will we be able to have any of the school bonding days like rally or winter carnival?
I hope so. I think we're going to, you know, what we learned from graduation last year, we were really nervous about what graduation was going to look like for the class of 2020. And so what we did was we sat down with the class and we said, what is it about graduation that's most important to you? Because some people were talking about, let's just have a remote graduation, let's just get through it. And students said, you know what, we want to be together, we want to see our friends, we want to have our families see us walk. And we were able to do that at the Essex Fairgrounds. So we thought about, like, what's the heart of these events? Like, what is it that makes these events really special? And just like we did for graduation, I'll say graduation was my favorite graduation of all time, just because we were able to see each other and we were outdoors and there was energy and it was fun. And I never would have predicted that, you know, like a month before we figured it out, that it could be that cool. But so we'll try to do that same thing for those events this year. Like, I think Rally in the Valley, there's a way to get to the heart of, like, having teams do the dances, those kinds of things. Maybe this class could help video some of those things, you know, and get it out. Maybe we could have bonfires. Who knows? But we need to not quit. We need to stick with it, and we need to make sure that we get some of these events in.
All right. Thank you so much, Adam, for answering all these questions we have. This is the CVU Show, and please watch again.
Thanks so much.
Now on to sports with Coach Ron, interviewed by Joe Jacobs.
Thank you, Isaac. I'm Joe Jacobs with the CVU Show, and this is Coach Ron. I want to ask you how last night's game was.
Last night was the culmination of, months of work in the weight room, on the ball field over the summertime, and then a couple, 2.5, 3 weeks worth of practice getting ready. And it was extraordinary. We had a blast. We defeated Colchester 7-6. So that extra point on the foot of Ali Pudvar won the game for us. It was a game that you might expect in the rain, in that the ball was wet and heavy and slippery. And I can only imagine that our quarterbacks must have been frustrated by the number of times that the ball just went right through the receiver's hands.
Yeah.
No fault of theirs. That's the nature of the game in those conditions. But we won 7-6. We're 1-0. We're undefeated in 2020.
Mm-hmm. How has COVID affected the whole season?
From top to bottom, 100%. We, in the face of COVID, originally the state of Vermont was going to just shut football down entirely. Credit to the VPA, the Vermont Principals Association, the VIFL, the Vermont Interscholastic Football League, folks like our own Dan Shepherdson, our AD, got together and created a plan that they submitted to Montpelier and said, instead of nothing, how about this? And it was a 7-on-7 all-passing format football plan. The Governor Scott, agreed to it, and we set about training everybody to be either a quarterback, a running back, or a wide receiver, including the linemen.
Yeah.
So this is brand new learning for them. And it's been a blast. I characterize it as a cross between Mikhail Baryshnikov, who was a famous ballet dancer, and Baloo the Bear, who is famous for being Baloo the Bear. These guys have responded well. I think some of them believe this a chance to reveal their long-kept secret identities as wide receivers. And they're doing well. We're having a blast.
Yeah, that leads into my next question of how have you had to adapt the training schedule because of COVID?
Well, I did. I kind of got ahead of ourselves, didn't I? It's been that. We now dedicate most of our practice time to either executing on offense or defending on defense against a 7-on-7 format. We call our linemen the bigs for obvious reasons. They're bigger than the others, the smalls, the littles. But they play like in a 4-quarter game. The first and the third quarters are dedicated exclusively to our bigs versus our opponent's bigs. So they carry half of the game for us. Half of the outcome of the football game depends on them being able to perform. And so we dedicated a lot of time to teaching routes, to teaching defense, pass coverage. And then we obviously have our normal quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers practicing and executing as well. The offense and the defensive schemes are about the same for both. Offensively, we've simplified it a little bit because that's a lot to take in, you know? And they have responded phenomenally well. Now, in the midst of all that, we're still taking 15 or 20 minutes per practice to keep the nerves associated with the run game, with blocking techniques, with, we call them run fits, how our defensive line and linebackers defend against the run. All of those things, and D-backs for that matter, we're still teaching those, despite the fact that we won't use them at all this year. And the reason we're doing that is that we don't want that quadrant of our football players' brains to just go numb. You know, we want to keep that alive so that when we come back to it next year, and that's the plan, it's not 2 years ago that they last did it. Do you know what I mean? We're trying to keep it alive so that when we return to a run game, the guys are fresher than they would have been. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions I had for today.
Well, thank you for asking them.
Thank you for coming out.
Absolutely. Before I go, I got to tell you this. The pass that got the touchdown, that won the game for us, Isaac Bergeron, senior, would have been an offensive guard, 240-pound kid, can throw the ball 40 yards on a dime into the hands of Ty Deemer, who dove back corner of the end zone. I just want these guys to, if you can, put this in because they merit mention. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the CVU Show. Hope we see you all next time.
See you all next time.
Go Red Hawks.